why the West will break up in 2023, and it will be the year that the rotten Western totalitarian system will collapse. We're talking about the tremendous amount of corruption in the European Union, bags of money from Qatar to everybody there. Russ Warrior wrote a beautiful message on Twitter describing the fall of Europe. He explains how the financial Ponzi system becomes unsustainable with the exponential increase in energy prices, and how Europe will not accept the politics of the corrupt cabal in the name of European Union. Energy costs are increasing. They have increased by 300 to 500% in Europe in 1 year. This is clearly unsustainable, and in fact means that European industry is being destroyed by a lack of competitiveness. In order to keep their economies afloat during this economic crisis, European countries are increasing their debts with support packages of tens of billions of euros that will stop because it is ultimately too expensive. Returning to energy, it's very likely that despite the agreements they have signed here and there with new suppliers, the European countries have to find together 50 billion cubic meters of gas, and it seems that there is no source available. As the liberal system becomes more and more authoritarian, as the rules of COVID have become, the rejection of its model will spread to Europe as well as the US, because what has finally prevented its collapse is only media brainwashing and wealth where it is from behind, where it's coming from. These quote-unquote liberals have created a very weak society because they destroyed its pillars, the traditional family and its cultural roots. And without these pillars, which consolidate a society in the face of deep crisis, the generation of the abnormals is completely unable to withstand the suffering. The lack of competitiveness of the European industry will lead to the economic desertification of the continent. Most of the production is transferring to the United States, Asia, and energy-rich countries, India and China. Now, the debts of the EU are increasing. Of course, they can never be paid. The Ponzi scheme of the European Central Bank, ECB, to buy government debt is about to end. This will put a lot of pressure on the European financial markets, especially on the banks that are heavily exposed to debts of the countries that they could go countries that will go bankrupt. With a complete lack of unity in society, both at the national level due to toxic liberalism and at the European Union level because countries take measures on their own without consulting other members, the cards will quickly collapse. The growing divisions in the West due to the polarization between liberals on one hand and sensitized people on the other, increasing unemployment, widespread poverty could lead to uprisings, even daily violence. As a result of years of failure and poverty, Western leaders are deeply unpopular, with an approval rating of 20 to 30% today, which is incredibly low, especially in the current conditions where a politician who is supported by the majority of the population is required. Putin, for example, is still approved by 80% of the Russians. As the European Commission announces its own digital identity social credit system, as in China, it's not clear whether Europeans will passively accept this, especially given all the other issues. It's difficult to implement this mechanism if you are deeply unpopular and discredited. The Qatar scandal, Qatargate, is only the tip of the iceberg. The level of corruption at European Union level is shocking. What happened to von der Leyen's messages to the CEO of Pfizer, Alec Bourlas? Europeans are increasingly tired of the corrupt behavior of the members of European Parliament. At the national level, the lack of sovereignty, which essentially means following the orders of the US, EU, big pharma, financial speculators, make it impossible to take valid decisions in the interests of the people, which would be necessary in times of deep crisis like today. The Russian victory in the war in Ukraine will be the last nail in the coffin of the euro, the European currency, because the Europeans will finally ask themselves, was it worth exhausting our entire stockpile of weapons and abandoning cheap energy for a pointless crusade against Moscow that was always doomed to fail. The dollar's dominance is steadily eroding as more and more countries decide to abandon the dollar and trade in favor of national currencies. As China's economy has become the largest in the world, the BRICS countries, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the BRICS countries are growing in power and are leading the new multipolar world. But this is only one side of the coin. More deeply, and according to our own analysis, everything is organized, the powers cooperate all together against the people, and especially against the Europeans, because it is the people who have the ability to hinder today's coups. Don't forget that Angela Merkel won in September 2020 to see up close the work of the Chinese and their laboratories, Wuhan that is. In Chinese wine, the Chinese wine like dogs from injections, the rest the same. Most people are already underserved, such as the Chinese, Africans, South Americans, and if the European is hungry, they will all be together in the electoral company of Big Brother. Bruce Warrior forgets to write, or perhaps he has not understood, that the monopoly of issuing money belongs to the Westerners themselves, and they can buy them all regardless of race, color, gender. So the chaos is already planned, and they have their agents everywhere and in all countries. So get ready for the chaos they bring. The end is now, without fear, but ready for hunger and uprisings, as the solution is to them martial law. And this was from the Pelasgian, and I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box